This is StoryLink Radio. Our stories are presented before a live audience, then recorded for the StoryLink Radio podcast for your on-demand listening pleasure. Please visit StoryLinkRadio.com for show notes, to find out how to join our live audience, and for lots of free stuff, including free audiobooks and much more. If you enjoy the following prologue and would like to hear more of this story, please visit our website and comment on this episode. Visit www.storylinkradio.com. Going Back for Romeo, a Highlander romance by L.L. Muir. Alone with a Highlander in his castle on a cold, dark night. Okay, so it wasn't that cold. Jillian MacKay is being conned by a pair of 80-year-old witches. They're convinced she's the perfect sucker to test a prophecy, and they're willing to bury her alive to prove it. Once she escapes and finds herself in 15th century Scotland, she believes her return home depends on a heroic deed. She must rescue a plaid-clad Romeo and Juliet before tragedy can strike. The monster standing in her way, however, is a handsome Highlander, who might just be her own Romeo, a Romeo she must leave behind. Rather than surrender his secrets, Montgomery Ross would prefer to go down in history as the heartless creature who betrayed one sister and buried the other alive. When he falls in love with the prophesied faery who has come to expose him, he'll have to learn a wee lesson from the star-crossed lovers, or suffer the fate to which he once condemned them. Join us now for the prologue of Going Back for Romeo by L.L. Muir. Castle Ross, Eastbourneshire, Scotland, 1494. Odd. The stone closest to Laird Montgomery Ross's foot looked to be the same shape as the hole remaining in the side of his sister's tomb, but he refused to reach for it. "Nay, I'm not ready to be finished." Monty whispered his complaint to God, for sure it was God's hand that wrought such an appropriately shaped thing. Behind him, one of the priests cleared his throat. Monty knew without looking it had been the fat one who could not cease rubbing his hands together, even while Monty's sister was led inside her would-be grave. Oh, that bastard had been rubbing them for a fair 2 days, ever since he'd arrived to try Isabel as a witch. Oh, no doubt they were itchy for the feel of a woman's neck, since Monty had cheated them out of ringing his sisters. Monty could let the priest live, or he could be silent, but he could not manage both. "If you canna seem to clean those hands, father," he said without turning away from his morbid creation, "I'd be happy to rid you of them before I finish my task here. I'm sure my sister wouldn't mind the wait." A gasp of outrage was followed by silence, although the great hall was filled to the corners with his clan. Those who could not find space inside would soon enough hear of each stone lovingly placed as their laird buried his sister alive within their very hall, upon the stone dais behind the great Ross chair. Hopefully, they would remember Isabel's bravery, and not how oft his own tears mingled with the mortar. None breathed. None dared rub their hands. How could he possibly continue? How could he not? "Nay, I wouldn't mind a bit, if you're quick about it, brother mine." Isabel's voice echoed eerily from the tomb, and she smirked at him from within the tiny patch of light, the same shape as the odd stone. "In fact, toss the bloody things in here with me, and I'll leave them at the gates of hell. Himself can collect them when he arrives." Her unholy laughter, no doubt, had even the dogs wishing they could cross themselves. Aye, but it was music to Monty's ears. The Kirk's men allowed her no blanket, but she'd have the image of revenge to keep her warm. "Isabel!" Morna screamed. Monty's other sister stood off to his right, restrained by her puny Gordon husband. "'Tis all my fault. Forgive me." Isabel's sober face came forward to fill the hole as she searched for Morna, giving Monty one last glimpse of her red hair. "Morna, love, dinna grieve. The fairy will come to make it all right again. Watch for the fairy, and keep away from your husband." "Silence!" the robed bastard roared. Isabel laughed again, backing away from the hole. After all, what could the man do to her now? Monty would not ruin her trust in the blasted faery. But if the creature ever placed its magic toes on Ross land, it would be dead before it ever took a breath of heathered air. It was time. Monty looked at the stone. It was meant. I love you, sister mine. His words were quiet, for Isabel alone. And are you, Monty? Blow us a kiss. When he raised his crusted fingers to his lips, his palm filled with tears, but they washed none of the nightmare away. Monty blew a kiss that was instantly returned. I'm staying right here, Pet. You'll know alone. Well, get on then. The whimper in her voice was slight. I'll have a wee nap if you'll but douse the light. And with a final wink, she disappeared. Monty reached for the stone, dipped its edges in muck, and pushed it home, breaking his heart in the doing. After long moments of stillness, his hands slowly opened and dropped away. From the corner of his eye, he saw Morna swoon. But someone else would have to catch her. Someone without mud or blood on his hands. Morna wouldn't welcome his comfort anyhow. But he knew both sisters blamed him. Och, if he'd have known the outcome, would he have acted differently? What kind of bastard would not? No, there was no stopping the twist of his fate, the sob from his chest. He turned his head to the side and bellowed, Out! Nearly everyone fled or slithered from the hall. All but the Kirk's henchman who would stay until they believed his sister quite dead. Only then did Monty hear the muffled sobs of Isabel. She sounded as if she were deep in the ground. His heart shuddered with cold. Oh, dear God, what had he been thinking? His plan was madness. She would never last. Not enough time. He had to get her out. He reached for the odd stone and was struck soundly from behind. Thank you for listening to StoryLink Radio. If you like what you've just heard, we hope you will subscribe to our podcast and pass along our web address, www.storylinkradio.com. Be sure to visit our website for show notes, to find out how to join our live audience, and for lots of free stuff, including free audiobooks and much more. Join us next time for another story from StoryLink Radio.